Thomas liked his job so much. He ran on the branch line with Annie and Clarabelle, his two branch line coaches. But he also wanted to access the driver about who runs this branch line and what did he came to Sodor. But his driver didn't want to answer that. But he was just curious about what was the branch line like. Later, Thomas puffed into his shed after his last train for the day. He was very tired. Percy and Toby were already asleep. He said goodnight to his crew and left. It wasn't long before Thomas drifted off to sleep. A while later, Thomas woke up. He looked around and could hear a puffing sound through the area, and the fog was so thick too. He couldn't help that something was off. Then some shunting trucks could be heard. Hello? He said. Is someone there? No one replied. He appeared into the mist and saw an orange tank engine. It had 4 wheels, but 2 bogies. It looked like it hadn't been there for a decade. Then the orange engine began to puff away, and all Thomas could do was watch as the orange engine puffed away into the fog. And then suddenly, there was silence, and no whistling, just silent. Thomas couldn't help about what he just heard, but he didn't know what to do. Whoever was out there could be still here. Soon, he closed his eyes and drifted into slumber. The next morning, Thomas couldn't think about what he heard last night. He tried to ignore it, but it was still onto his mind. He soon arrived at Ellsworth Station where Edward is. He noticed a little tank engine was not normal himself.
Are you alright, Thomas?
Edward asked as he came up.
You are usually quiet this morning. Is something wrong?
No, Edward. I saw something last night, Thomas said nervously.
Oh, what did you see then? It could be an animal or something.
Then, Thomas took 3 deep breaths and told his tales to him. When he finished, Edward sighed and looked down at his buffers.
Poor Kyle,
Edward said silently.
I wish he couldn't have been so friendly, but now he acted his fate.
You know about this engine, Edward? Thomas asked to him.
Well, Thomas, since you asking, I guess I could tell you about the engine of what he'd been for.
Edward said before the guard's whistle called out.
Oh, sounds like I gotta go. I will talk about it in the sheds, Thomas,
he said as he puffed away. Thomas was just wondering why Edward didn't speak much, and who was the orange engine. He didn't say anything as he puffed to Farquhar Station. Soon he arrived at the sheds where the other engines. Edward waited for Thomas to tell him once he was back down into his berth. He could see he looked worried that Edward will tell the story to the other engines in front of him. Well, Edward, said Thomas quietly, it's about time you tell who's that engine and what he's here for. Edward let out a wheeze of steam and told his tale. Before Edward came to this railway, long time since he came to Sodor, he met some of the few engines he had met. The engines that he knew, few of them, were 87546 and 98462, Jeffrey, and even an orange engine named Bradford, the 1909 engine. But people called him the 1909 engine because he was here to help out the other railways. Bradford liked his job so much. It was his dream that he ever done it before he'd do some shunting. Taking goods and even pull passenger trains. He was the controller's favorite engine. He was even Edward's back engine. Ever since he and Edward enjoyed chatting to each other, Until one day, the manager asked one of the engines to pick up the girders, but Bradford volunteered to take it, and the manager accepted it. Soon he arrived at the smelters picking up the girders. The yard was so spooky, but Bradford didn't mind visiting here. The next day, the controller came to the shed for some news.
My good friend Bertram Topham Hatt has told me that you will be going to a different railway tomorrow morning. Edward and Bradford, you will be collecting the last girders from the smelters. I am trusting you on this job.
With that, the controller turned and walked away. Bradford, however, puffed away to the sheds as Edward watched him leave.
And that was the last time I saw him. I came to the railway and there was nothing has been ever since.
What happened then? Thomas asked.
Well, few months later, the controller to Bradford, he said that he performed an engine that was going to scrap him instead. He said he doesn't have enough money to repair or send him. He changed his mind to save up his allowance and for an engine to arrive. Bradford was not pleased about this. He worked all of his life might be old, but he didn't feel like a very useful engine. So he begged for the controller to not scrap him.
I'm sorry, Bradford, but times have changed. Besides, I can't afford you to the railway because you're too expensive and I unfortunately cannot repair you. So therefore you'll be sent for scrap. The diesel is on his way to come pick you up at the sheds, and the new engine will be arriving soon.
The controller walked away while Bradford glared at him. He didn't want it to be scrapped. He'd rather go to the other railway on his own. Then he had an idea. He decided to escape. That was a good idea for a run. His driver filled up his coal. He rushed away in a rush. He found a puff he had never knew he had. He was soon closest to the station. Then disaster. The mainland diesel rolling along with the express train. But Bradford didn't notice that he's on the same line as him.
Whoa! Slow down, steamer!
Huh? Why, the old sparks!
Groaned Bradford. His driver applied the brakes, but it was too late.
That was the last thing he ever done. But they say that in October, many engines and foremen heard the screeching brakes and a huge scratch echoing around the bend. So I can only mean one thing.
Wait, so you're saying he is real? He's still out there when I saw him last night?
Well, Thomas, now that I told you the whole story, he sealed his fate.
Edward finished while Thomas gasped. The engine he saw last night was him, but it was impossible that Edward's story was true. A few days later, Thomas and Edward didn't say nothing until then, but on certain night, they can also hear of Bradford the runaway engine, screeching brakes, and a huge crash, but he was still here.